Civil Aviation, Episode 3 from the MINI Aviation Management course for cabin crew. My name is Julia George. I used to be a cabin crew for Qatar Airways for 10 years, where I have resigned from my last work position of a cabin service director. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the civil aviation. Prior to that, make sure to press subscribe, stay on my YouTube channel, click the subscribe button, and perhaps after watching this video, check out the playlist of all the YouTube videos I have created in order for you to facilitate your process of becoming a cabin crew for the airline you're wishing for, and much more than that. Let's start with the civil aviation. When we speak about civil aviation, we speak about one of the two major categories of flying representing all non-military aviation related to both sectors, private and the commercial. We also should mention over here that most of the countries in the world are members of the International Civil Aviation Organization, or the so-called ICAO, and they work together to establish common standards and recommended practices for the entire civil aviation throughout that agency. The civil aviation as a term includes two major categories. One is scheduled air transport, which is including all passengers and cargo flights that are operating on a regularly scheduled routes, and the other one is the general aviation, or a GA, which is including all the other civil flights which are private or commercial. Although scheduled air transport is the larger operation in terms of passengers numbers, the general aviation is larger when it comes to the number of flights that are operated. What I also think that it's relevant to mention over here is that some countries also make a regulatory distinction between whether the aircrafts are flown or are for hire, such as commercial aviation that includes most of the flying done by hire, particularly scheduled services on airlines, and the other one is the private aviation that includes pilots flying for their own purposes, which can be recreation, business meetings, etc., without receiving any kind of remuneration. All scheduled air transports are commercial, but the general aviation can be either commercial or private. Normally, the pilot, the aircraft, the operator, they all must be authorized to perform commercial operations through separate commercial licensing, registration, and operation certificates. It is also important that all these informations I have shared with you are available on the internet, and should you wish to deepen your knowledge, never hesitate to search, or perhaps you would like to contact me on my Instagram account, xcrew, which is right over here. Now, it is important to mention that if we want to have a healthy and a well-managed civil aviation sector, then we need to take a look at the system that is supported by good aviation policy making and regulations, and these all are vital to the economy of every state or country. The system is responsible for the oversight and the regulation of the entire civil aviation, with the focus of the aviation safety, with the focus of the aviation security, the airspace policy, the economic regulation, the efficiency, sustainability, customer protection, and last but not the least, it is with respect to the environment as well. The system, we can define it as a set of things that are working together as part of a mechanism or an interconnecting network, which is kind of complex whole, and it has its own elements, it has its own structure, and it has its own boundary conditions. Later on in this video, I would speak a little bit more about those boundary conditions, so they would become a bit more clear to all of us. I will try to explain this in my own way, so it's going to be a bit more clear and more easy to understand when it comes to the system. We have four important components over here. One component is humans, or all of us. The other one is the infrastructure. We have the technologies. And last but not the least one, we have the processes. Now, under all of these four components that I have mentioned, we have something that is called a social framework. And if we would like to be more precise when we speak about the social framework, we can refer to different types of framework. I'm going to mention over here the legal framework, the ethical framework, the economic framework, and last but not the least, which I believe is important, is the ecological framework. To me, I believe this is the most simple way we can explain how a system in aviation would look like, but I can also use another way to visualize the system into words that would make it even more easier for us to understand. Now, let's imagine that we have an aircraft in the middle, and let's for a moment visualize what are the components that are around this aircraft. I've also summarized the components as I have mentioned previously into four components which are very close to the aircraft, and those would be the manufacturers, would be the airlines, would be the airport, and last but not least would be the air transport management. We also have a widened circle after all these four components that are around around the airport, as I have mentioned, and we can mention that in that widened circle would be perhaps the most important people or the most important part of the entire civil aviation, which would be the customers. And last but not the least, around all these sub-circles, we have something called the society, we have the economy, we have the technologies that are around there, we have the politics, and also we can over here mention the regulation and etc. etc. All of these components that we have mentioned, they belong to something that we're calling the transport system. Now here comes an important question. Who is involved in this system that we are previously speaking about, that we are previously um, describing and mentioning about? Now the answer is very simple, and I have divided three categories that are very closely connected to this system. One will be the private industry, the second one would be the passengers or the customers that I have mentioned previously, and then we have the public governments. Earlier, we also mentioned something about boundary conditions, which I have promised and I have shared earlier that I'm going to talk a bit more. And I believe it is worth to explain a bit more because it is an important factor in the civil aviation topic, and the answer of this question, which will give the a bit more clarification, is who defines the boundary conditions by law. We have two organizations over here that are called, which are important, and these are called the global organization and the national organization. And it is important to know what is under the global organization and what is under the national organization. In the global organization, we have the United Nations organization, which is connected to ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and we have EU, the European Union, Commission, and Parliament. In the national organizations, we are including over here the governments of the countries, we have the ministers, we have the different authorities. We also, under the national organizations, have the court as well. To summarize this topic about the civil aviation, I would like to answer perhaps the most important question of all, and that is, why do we care about aviation so much? Now, there are so many reasons why we care about aviation so much, and we can talk about it perhaps until tomorrow, but I would like to highlight the most important ones, which I believe are concerning all of us, including you that you're watching this video. Aviation guarantees us mobility and a chance where we want to be, and a chance where we have imagined to be. We have a chance to be where we needed to be. The second thing is that aviation is a business that brings us revenue and brings us profit, either as a country and as individuals as well. Aviation is giving us jobs, and we make our living from that job. As individuals, we pay taxes, and we do contribute towards the well-being of the society thanks to the pay that we're getting working in the aviation. Aviation is a need for the society and an important economical factor in the entire human existence on a macro and a micro level. I would like to thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to click subscribe, hit the notification button for the many videos that are coming, which will be completing the frame of the mini aviation management course for cabin crew. And last but not least, don't forget also to follow me on my Instagram account, xcrew, where I am publishing on regular basis a lot of aviation news, a lot of updates that are happening across the globe. And I'm going to be seeing you very soon. Bye bye and have a nice day.